All right, another week, another preview episode on the Pats Interference Podcast. It's Thursday, October 23rd, and we are again part of the law-abiding, line-hearted, lovable CLNS Media Network. Patriots are 5-2, winners of 4 straight. Things are feeling good. They're touchdown favorites at home, which feels like they have not been at home nor touchdown favorites. Well, granted, they were touchdown favorites last week, but they've not been at home since they were suddenly this new team bound for the playoffs, beating the Bills and just the apple of everyone's eye who's been studying quarterback play, which includes our guest here today, national NFL analyst Dan Pizzuta, who is coming up here in a minute. K'Lavon Chaisson on the back end of this with another 4-minute drill, who I told right off the bat, Pop Douglas just had our best 4-minute drill in podcast history. Okay, he dropped his alias in Uber, my name Leonard, which made the rounds. I was just so glad to see that across social media. He gave up everything we asked. I said, look, man, you are Cam Newton to his Tom Brady. We gotta see if you can still be Superman coming out of the booth. He came out the booth. All right. And I might have blocked K'Lavon for a half second. And he also shared his own Uber alias, among other things. But before we get to Dan, before we get to K'Lavon, a couple of notes. As I mentioned, vibes are high in Foxborough, but they are still very much taking these Browns seriously. Mike Vrabel said this is the best defense the Patriots have seen all season. Josh McDaniels said that same thing here today, Thursday, when we talked with him. He said their front four is exceptional. Myles Garrett, obviously a big reason why. And Vrabel has also been passing out little tidbits. We heard this from Mike Smith, their outside linebackers coach. I talked with some offensive linemen because, as you probably heard by now, Vrabel was in Cleveland last year. So normally I wouldn't give a ton of credence to, oh, you used to work there, you know, the personnel, it kind of cuts both ways, blah, blah, blah. He had his hands in so many places. And granted, you might be like, who needs insider info to, bet against the Browns? Well, look, with a young team and this good of a defense, you'll take any info you can get. And Mike Smith today, the outside linebackers coach, said it absolutely helps. And that is not a guy who is BSing for a soundbite. So one other tidbit from Vrabel's press conference, I asked about Terrell Williams, who we know is still out, their defensive coordinator, with prostate cancer. But he's in meetings. According to Vrabel, his spirits are high. You'd love to hear that because, of course, we're here for the football and we're here for the fun and we're here for the 4-minute drills. But that's human, real life stuff that he's going through. And so I'll leave it here. But I have a story coming Saturday in the Herald you do not want to miss. And if it's print, it'll be Sunday, but online on Saturday. Just take a look. There are a lot of people that opened up about his situation and what it means just to have him around. On a much less serious note, health-wise, Craig Woodson was back at practice today. That is big news because he's played 98% of the snaps, and he started all 7 games for the Patriots at safety. He has an ankle injury. Wasn't super involved today, and he didn't practice yesterday, but just, again, something to keep an eye on. It looks like Jalen Hawkins will be back after missing the last 2 games. The bigger news probably is in Cleveland, where Jerry Jeudy was back at practice today. He's got a knee injury, and David Njoku looks like he will be back, their second leading receiver, athletic tight end, because he's been limited the last 2 days and had missed some time earlier this year. So tentatively, the Browns offense should be full go, which is good because if they are not, you're looking at one of the worst offenses at less than 100%, and you're probably treating that matchup against the Patriots defense like you would a commercial, just being like, hey, let's get to the goods. Let's get to Drake Maye. Let's get to Myles Garrett. And while we're at it, let's get to Dan Pizzuta, national NFL analyst who must be coming off of the all-time emotional crash coming from the Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny to this little rinky-dink outfit. Dan, thanks for making time, my man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And always a pleasure to be joining you.
Too kind. So, look, I think the answer is the same for everyone right now. I have written a lot about Drake Maye. I have talked a lot about Drake Maye. I have heard a lot of other people talk about Drake Maye. When I ask you, what is the one thing that interests you most about the Patriots right now? Is there another answer? And if there's not, that's okay.
I mean, no. Respectfully to the rest of the team, no. He's just playing at such an insanely high level right now. And again, like we'll probably get to it. It hasn't been the toughest slate of defenses, which I think I've seen some people knock that, I think, more than it should be knocked. I think one of the good things, like if you look at like the oldest, football outsiders type of things, the best mark of a good team is beating bad teams, not necessarily the good teams beating good teams. If you are able to blow out bad teams, and I think that goes for quarterbacks too. If you are good enough to be blowing out bad defenses, that's a sign of a good quarterback. So I think just what he is doing right now, the way he is able to just kind of command that offense, just kind of fitting balls into all types of holes in the defense, whether it's, just soft holes in the zone or he's throwing deep as he is. Like, it's just, he's playing really well and it's very fun to watch. Outside of that too, it's not a very like mechanical, 1-2 like we kind of might have seen. He's doing some very fun things on the field also.
So Dan, you know how when you get excited, you kind of like spill the beans, like you can't wait to share news, and then you say it sooner than you want to otherwise. I have a Drake Maye stat that I was going to save for the Patriots offense versus Browns defense breakdown, but I can't help myself. You know what his passer rating is on deep passes this year?
It's probably it's probably quite high. It's in the probably 140s. If you say it's 158.3, I wouldn't be surprised.
It's 158.3. It's perfect. He has been statistically, granted, an old stat with a kind of wonky formula, but the one everybody knows.
Yeah.
He has been perfect on deep passes. This is according to PFF. He's 14 of 18 for 400 and I think it's 24 some odd yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks. This is insane because obviously deep passes are difficult. We all get that. But his completion percentage on those throws, 20 yards or longer down the field, is higher than his overall completion percentage on all throws, which, by the way, leads the whole freaking league. So, again, I don't blame you for picking Drake Maye. I wrote today in a story that came out about, like, look, this is the best defense he's ever seen. And I think that battle, when I talk about treating the Browns offense and Dylan Gabriel versus, Robert Spillane and Milt Williams and Christian Gonzalez, is like a commercial. We all want to see the two best players in the field, which will be Drake Maye and Myles Garrett, the way they're playing right now, go head to head. Is there anything else though on like a micro level, because you do such a good job like diving into the numbers and noticing the nuance, like just Patriot specific, not the matchup, but just when you watch them?
There was a little bit for a time, and I think they've maybe gone away and not been as efficient, but there were like a couple weeks when they were really leaning into the pony personnel that I know we talked about earlier in the season. So there were like a couple things there where I thought that might expand a little bit and they're trying, but I think they've just kind of found the Drake Maye formula. And I think going into pony a little bit might disrupt that a little more. So I think they have shied away from it a little bit and not having to at least maybe lean into it as much as they might have thought to manufacture some things. I think that might be an interesting way to get the run game continuing to go, because I think one of the interesting things with Drake Maye is that he's been doing this without the support of a good run game, like at all, for much of the season. So I think when we've seen some of these, young quarterbacks who have been able to get to the just kind of development, they've had this support system around them, and Maye to that extent has not had that. So I think like that's just kind of one extra level for the Patriots and the Maye really just efficiency this year. That's been really exciting.
It's such a good point, because I think the way, at least like locally and probably here on this podcast, we've discussed Maye and the run game as been two separate entities, when in reality, and Josh McDaniels even kind of spoke to this today, it's all connected, because what McDaniel said today, when I asked like, hey, you're 7 games in, much better inside zone team, power and counter have been better by success rate. Your outside zone kind of stinks. I didn't include that, but I was like, are you starting to identify like the stuff that you're good at and you want to major in? And we all know their game plan, week to week offense, our identity is not having an identity. And he said, look, and this is something I said a couple of weeks ago, which naturally made me feel good. You need to commit to some of the inefficient stuff if it's tied to things that are going to give you the biggest payout. For example, outside zone is tied to all their outside zone bootleg play action throws, where Maye has been absolutely money on, and almost close to perfect again by that passer rating. So it's interesting that, again, the run game stinks. What are you going to do to fix it? You can just keep spamming Drake Maye, because that's how good he's been. Where you look at other, speaking of deep passing, like I was looking this up today, the highest passer rating in the last 10 years, according to the Sports Info Solution, again, passes 20 yards or longer. Brock Purdy, 2023. What did Brock Purdy have going for him? Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Kyle Shanahan, Trent Williams, all of those pieces. It's not that Drake Maye doesn't have pieces, but it's not the infrastructure, and not the infrastructure with the run game. that take some pressure off of him. Every game is on his shoulders offensively.
Yeah, and like you said, it's one of those things where I think they're top 5 in the rate of play action, and it's not that you have to establish the run, which I think we've gotten away from that. I think thankfully I haven't seen that a lot, but you have to show it. And it does have to match. So again, Patriots are just 12th in EPA per drop back off play action. So it has to be part of the offense. And I don't think they are trying to overly make the run happen when it's not working, which has been good. But yeah, like you said, you have to sometimes lean into some of that just to show what you're doing so you can match it up to play action, which is the important part. And again, something they've been working really well so far this season.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe they get better at it. The left side of the line is athletic enough, and then it's just timing and climbing to the second level and hitting your combo blocks and outside zone, which, it's funny because the rest of the league has adjusted to the McVay Shanahan offenses. And so they get better defending outside zone. And those generally across the league are less efficient than really they've been in recent history. But duo and power and counter up, and it's all cyclical. But anyway, the pony personnel, for just to go back a couple of minutes, for people who don't know, is 2 running backs on the field at the same time. Not 2 backs and one's a fullback, and Jack Westover is just going to go in there and kind of get in the way, but not do a whole lot. I have advocated for the Patriots to trade for a running back, and Justice Hill has been my guy. And my fake deal was Anthony Jennings, who would fit a defense that needs all of the run stoppers it can get its hands on in Baltimore, and a guy who can play in that type of scheme, plus a 7th. Let's just sweeten it because they've got 2 6-round picks next year, to a 6-round pick to Baltimore. Get Justice Hill in here. He's elusive. He's proven. You have him under contract through next season. So I ask you, trade deadline is coming up. It's close enough. Who are players that you're targeting if you're the Patriots that you like beyond Trey Hendrickson, or go get A.J. Brown? Guys who are not going to come here if we really just want to hit fast forward and spoil the deadline for Patriots.
Right. And I think that's kind of one of the sad things about the NFL trade deadline. As much as we have seen trades pick up, there's still so many more names that are going to be talked about than are going to be traded. So I think when you look at one of the 2 New Orleans wide receivers, I think would be fun additions, whether that's Olave or Rashid Shaheed. I think Shaheed would be a pretty fun vertical threat that you could have. Obviously Kayshon Boutte is doing that on the outside as that X receiver, and he has been the favorite downfield target. But I think if you kind of just added that speed, actual just straight line speed element, it would open up some more things. I think Olave could probably do the same thing. I think he would be a little more more costly. He has the 5th-year option next year. It's tricky with both of them because there's the 5th-year option for Olave. Shaheed is coming up on a contract, so you're either trying to sign him now, which might be a little more expensive than you want to, or you're just trading a draft pick for a half of a season, which is also tricky. But I think just stylistically, I think both of those guys could fit. And I think just kind of adding one more little piece to that wide receiver room could be a lot of fun.
I like Shaheed a lot. I think it was Monday with Mike Jarrett. We based on things that we've heard and gathered, poo-pooed the idea of a big swing like Olave because the Patriots are going to be precious with their draft picks. Mike Vrabel, who is close to being everything in this organization, still sees this as year 1 of a rebuild. And it's not to say they're not competing. It's not to say that they are not going for, as far as they want to in the playoffs. They already expect to be there. They expect to win and really compete once they get to January. It's just to say that they want to still get their own guys in here and develop them. And Olave, for my money, is maybe a concussion or 2 away from being out of the league. So even ponying up a 2nd-round pick, which is probably what it would take in New Orleans, would be tough. Shaheed, though, I love. That is, like you're saying, the vertical threat with just the speed. And when Kyle Williams is here, Kyle Williams has not done anything on the field since the first day of training camp. That makes you point and say, okay, it's not just he's getting open, not getting the ball. Productive threat that if I'm a defensive coordinator, I have to watch out for 18. Shaheed has done that. And even if it's a kind of I don't want to say gimmicky, but there's a package for him, that still is an element that you kind of, to steal from last episode, hit an easy button. And there goes 6 points if you can keep him open. So I like that a lot. Any sense of what it would take to get Shaheed if you had to put a price on him?
And I'm not sure. I would, if it's a second or third, I think it's probably some kind of day 2 pick, just because I don't think New Orleans is going to want to give them away, especially because I think if they're also trading one of these wide receivers, it's more about how they feel about the development of Spencer Rattler, because I don't think you want to be building up Rattler and then trading one of those guys. So I think they're not. And the Saints are just this team that has been weird forever, right? Because they don't really want to. They traded for who is it? Vele from Denver, like before the season. So it's like they were a team that thought they were that. So I think it's always going to be tricky trying to trade something, to New Orleans and get a player away from them. So I think probably a day 2 pick is, and I think again, that's kind of where it is tricky in value for a guy like Shaheed, because he's obviously a great player, but with the unknown of him being a pending free agent, you're not sure exactly what you're getting. You want to make sure that future is kind of set in there before you make that deal.
I've got one more for you, and this is a bigger swing. So for the people who are, annoyed or upset or just go like, all right, if you're only going to throw out Justice Hill and Rashid Shaheed, like I'm just going to hit fast forward and get to the Browns because that's more exciting than these trade targets. How about Jalen Phillips? And this would be an in-division swing. And if you're in the edge market, you're going to have a lot of competition from all of the teams that think they can get to the Super Bowl, your Lions, your Bucks, your Chiefs. And I might have brought this up before. I know I've written about it, but I just want to hit it here and get your perspective. Because Jalen Phillips is a 26-year-old edge rusher who his first 2 years were almost as good as any, non-superstar, supernova pass rusher like Myles Garrett. 8.5 sacks, some more than 20 QB hits the next year. He plays in every game. The next 2 seasons, he's just wiped out by injury. And he comes back this year, and he's not been as productive on your box score stats. I think it was 1.5, maybe close to 2 or you can't get closer to 2 than 1.5. But you know what I mean? He's in that neighborhood. And the pressure stats, though, were there. And so my pitch is this. He is still a young player in his physical prime at a premium position who, yes, is going to hit free agency this spring. But you get him in. You argue that most teams are going to look at his stats and his injury history, and that will depress his market. But you stay here. We will keep you in a rotation. We believe in you. Re-sign and get him in the building for what, Bill Barnwell has projected this as like a pick swap. I think it was a 5th and Phillips for a 3rd. And I would say do that instead of the Lions. If you're the Patriots, it'd be a big swing. They want edge help. That's my idea. It's like kind of plagiarized idea, but you know what I mean? Like change the picks around a little bit. But that would be the big swing. If the Patriots are going to do something more than a 4th, young player, premium position that you intend to re-sign in the offseason.
Yeah, I think that fits a lot. It was hard to figure out something like that because there were a couple guys in like the Miami specifically when I was kind of looking at who the Patriots could potentially trade for, like a Jordan Brooks at a linebacker, guy who can play in coverage. And that's just something where the Patriots just haven't had that. As I was pulling it up, there are 68 linebackers with at least 100 coverage snaps. Spillane is 58th in yards allowed per coverage snap, and Ellis is 61st. So I was kind of looking to fill that kind of middle of the field a little bit. Jordan Brooks would be a guy who could potentially do that. But the interdivision trade is,
it's tricky.
Yeah, tricky. I think we started to see teams not care as much about it because usually it's teams on different timelines. And if you're willing to do the deal, it probably does make sense for both teams. But it's still why I didn't. That would have been my other suggestion. But if you can get a guy like Phillips in, that does make a lot of sense because he's something you could potentially be building that edge room around, and because you don't really have like that guy right now, even though you have like a Chaisson who's been fun, but again, like that's not something you're going to be building the edge room around for the next few years.
If this does happen, my only request of the greater league is that Sean McDermott holds an exact press conference like Mike Tomlin did after the Bengals acquired Joe Flacco from the Browns. He was like, I don't know, I guess Andrew Berry's a lot smarter than me. And Sean McDermott in this case would say, I guess Chris Greer's a lot smarter than me because I don't know why you give a team in your division a player who was good enough to start week 1 and is now going to come kick my ass. And lo and behold, that's exactly what 40-whatever-year-old Joe Flacco now eating dinner by himself and telling the world, I'm as happy as I've ever been away from my kids. Anyway, it's just it's pipe dream possibility right here. But that would be my bigger swing. All right. You ready to talk some football?
Let's do it.
Okay. So before we get to the Patriots offense versus the Browns defense, which is just going to be, the two best units on the field at the same time in this entire game, I got to tell the folks about PrizePicks because, look, there are a lot of places that are trying to get your money and your time if you want to win real cash watching sports. PrizePicks is the simplest. It's the best. I do this for baseball. I do this for basketball because here's how it works. You pick two players on their whole board that all come with stats, and you can change the number and you can change the stats, and you can pick whatever player you want. You do 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 players, and that's a lineup. And then you go more, you go less on all those stats. It could be points, it could be rebounds, it could be rushing yards, it could be touchdowns. In fact, I'll give you some picks right here on lineup because this is how easy it is. And once you log in, there's $50 coming to you in free lineups. But first, here are those picks. Ramondre Stevenson against one of the best run defenses in the league. How about less than 61.5 rushing yards, which, by the way, is way higher than what you're seeing from him lately in terms of his season average. Drake Maye, 200 passing yards or more. So more than 199.5 passing yards. And then Quinshon Judkins, less than 71.5 rushing yards against another good run defense, which, by the way, the Patriots have not allowed 50 rushing yards to any running back this season. Why is Quinshon Judkins going to get 71.5? So whether you like those picks or you hate them or you use Venmo or use whatever you want, you go to PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, and here is that $50 deal for you. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups, 50, after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. We successfully got through the read without any mention of today's news, and that is as general as I'm going to get about that. The Browns are 2-5. They are coming off of, here are their last 4 games, a 31-6 win versus Miami. Big win for them, like huge game. This was like the happiest the city of Cleveland has been in a long, long time. 23-9 loss to Pittsburgh, though, came before that. Then a 21-17 loss versus Minnesota. That was in London. And before that, a 34-10 loss at Detroit. It happens. The Lions are good now. All those concerns about coordinators leaving, they upgraded on defense, it seems. Offense, we'll see. By DVOA, the Browns are 31st in offense. They're 5th in defense, 28th on special teams. So again, starting with the heavy hitters. You want to simplify this? We're making a poster of this game. It's Drake Maye on one side. It's Myles Garrett on the other. You tell me where the key battlegrounds are, and you can start there or wherever you want as far as how this side of the ball goes.
Yeah, that's probably what it's going to come down to. Like, how do you stop Myles Garrett from wrecking the offense? But when you look at it, like Cleveland is 5th in defensive DVOA, but that's from being the best run defense in the league. But they're only 14th or 15th in pass defense DVOA. So this is still like a secondary you can get to if the defensive line is not completely wrecking the game, which it can, but also, as we've seen, the defensive line can still wreck the game on a few plays, and they're still giving up some big plays on the back end. So it's how much can you stop that? I think the interesting thing is how you're going to try to get around that. Obviously, it's probably going to be up against Will Campbell a lot because Garrett just lines up on that side of the defense. So it's probably going to be still a lot of 12 personnel, give a little bit of a chip to Garrett, who's the highest double teamed defense edge rusher in the league, which matters sometimes. Sometimes it just doesn't because he'll still just run through it. So it's just kind of like, what are those plays going to be? And are those going to be plays that completely flip the game, or are they ones that you can manage and still continue to push the ball down the field afterwards? So I think Garrett's going to get his a little bit. Drake Maye is one of the least pressured quarterbacks because he's so good at getting the ball out, but has one of the highest pressure to sack rates in the league, which I was kind of a little surprised to see. But if you kind of look at FTN's charting, the percentage of those that are like placed on the quarterback is like the 5th lowest in the league. So there's a lot going on there of what creates pressure and why those sacks are happening. So it's probably going to be, 3-4 sack game, but if those aren't going to kill you, and that's how I think, New England can continue to keep pressure on this defense.
This is not my key, but it's the most boring point I will make all season. And I just think it has to be made. How often does Drake Maye have two hands on the football when those 3 to 4 sacks come his way? Right? Like holding out of the football is essential to football. But here it is going to determine whether Myles Garrett against superhuman. Like one of my parents called me this week, like, oh, I read your story today about, Drake Maye and Myles Garrett. Is Myles Garrett really this good at terror? Oh my God. I was like, yeah, he's that good. He's a 4-time All-Pro. He gets like 14 sacks just by showing up. Okay. So Drake has to protect the ball in the pocket because look, like you said, he can take those 3 to 4 sacks and the Patriots can survive. They've done it. They have one of the best passing offenses in the league, despite those 22, I think it is, sacks that he's taken this year. But they cannot survive if he takes one of the 20-yard line, fumbles, and the Browns then have 18 yards to go to get a touchdown as one of the worst offenses in the league. My curiosity is how Jim Schwartz, the Browns defensive coordinator, attacks this offense, because I think he knows Josh McDaniels is going to vary his approach, right? They might go tempo a little bit. They're certainly going to run some wham runs. They're going to have draws. They're going to have screens. They're going to have quick hitters. But I know he's once said at a clinic, and this sounds like anecdotal evidence, which is never good for broad points, but I think this will hold up. Against bad offensive lines, you want to rush 5 because that generates one-on-ones. Whether they rush 5 or not, they're going to obviously try to scheme as many one-on-ones as possible against Jared Wilson and against Will Campbell. So sliding, bootleg, whatever you see is stuff that Myles Garrett and Malik Collins, who's, by the way, been as good as he is on the interior by some advanced metrics, they've seen it before. So what are you going to do when you have your counters? And as Josh McDaniel says today, Garrett's gotten really good at having counters to your counters. Okay, so what's the counter to the counter to the counter going to be? And ultimately, it is just going to be those one-on-one matchups. But I think the positioning and the schematics around that in the front, not even like clearing the picture and all simulated pressures, it's just like, how are you going to get the players you want blocked by the guys that you have out there? You know what I mean? Like that chess piece is too cliche, but you kind of understand what I'm getting at.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the interesting things for Cleveland is they haven't been a defense so far that's really gone out of their way to do that. I think they've just been, we can rush 4. They have one of the lower blitz rates in the league. They have one of the lower stunt rates in the league. And from looking at match quarters right now from Cody Alexander, they are one of 2 teams along with Houston that hasn't run a simulated pressure yet this year on defense. So it's just, our 4 are going to be better than your 5 right now is usually how Cleveland has done this. And because of some of the secondary help they've needed, they would like to keep 7 in coverage. And I think that helps. So if they have a change up that you're going to send a couple more blitzes a little bit, but I think for the most part, this is really going to be Cleveland's going to send their best guys, and you better have a plan to stop them, because if you don't, they're still going to get theirs anyway.
Yeah. Interesting note here, because Cleveland will play more man coverage than most teams the Patriots will see. I don't know if that's going to be true this week, because Drake Maye is the best quarterback in the league by EPA per play against man coverage. And that is, I don't think going to sustain, because, Stephon Diggs he's been very good. Kayshon Boutte's been excellent deep, but there's only one person who can be number 1 in the league at that. And I just don't think it's going to be this offense and this quarterback for that much longer, because there are just more talented units out there. But nonetheless, for now, if you're the Browns, you're going, I don't think that's a world we want to live in full time, because he'll burn us eventually.
Yeah. And I had that stat on Mina's show. I went up today. So Maye is averaging 10.7 yards per attempt against cover 1, which is a yard higher than Lamar Jackson, who's in second. So he's first in EPA per dropback and DVOA against cover 1. And a lot of it, you said, is Stephon Diggs, who has a 27% target share, and he's winning there in a lot of, fun Stephon Diggs type ways that we've seen. And then, Boutte is the guy who really can push the ball down the field when he is able to just get past somebody. He has 10 targets, 9 receptions, 3 of them are touchdowns. So that's where that deep element is. So they have multiple ways to win against man. But I think that's kind of plays into what Cleveland wants to do, because they want to play man. They want to be pressing those guys against the line, be aggressive in coverage to disrupt the timing, let that front 4 try to get home quicker. So I think it's tough when they are kind of backing up and playing zone, because then you're not really as aggressive, up front, and that's kind of what they want to do. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, a little bit for Cleveland.
Yeah, and I think if you are playing zone, you not only have more eyes on Drake Maye, who is going to scramble and is scrambled a
Yeah.
lot when he was pressured against Tennessee, like a little bit too much. A couple of those should have been throwaways. Get rid of it. The 19 yards you got on 5 scrambles and the 3 or 4 hits you took were not worth the price you paid. But moving on, you can keep eyes on a lot of those screens. Like as soon as they kind of trigger, it's not one guy in charge of the running back and everyone else is downfield being cleared out by those other routes. Like that could help a little bit. And it's going to come down to early down efficiency, right? Because, those front 4 can pin their ears back and go rush the passer if it's 3rd and 7 or longer. And the Patriots run game is a real issue right now. And they're going up against the best run defense in the league statistically in a lot of different areas. So how Josh McDaniels gets to those areas where they probably have to stay, more success rate than explosive play, because they're just not going to have the time in the pocket, is going to be really interesting. Because again, this defense has seen a lot of those quick hitting answers and typical responses to pressure, but you're not going to get 4 to 5 yards running the ball right now. As good as they were last week, it's just not going to happen against this defense.
Yeah, and I think one of the fun things about what Drake Maye is doing is those high success plays are also there. It's not just this, we're living on explosives and he's making some of these like out of this world throws, but the down to down consistency isn't there. And like that kind of was what was really exciting about his game last year, because he had the second highest success rate among the rookie quarterbacks last year. Even though, you might not have looked, people who weren't watching him day to day, maybe even some people who were watching him day to day did not, realize how good he was at kind of just keeping the successful plays happening. And I think that's what he can do. I think he's turning into kind of, the Patrick Mahomes, I'm not going to use like he's Patrick Mahomes, but the way Patrick Mahomes plays is he's going to take what the defense gives him. And in the past couple of years, it's been too much where he's relying on the short passes because that's what's open. But if there's a deep shot, Drake Maye is going to take it. If the defense is giving something that is a little more padded and there's a soft opening in the short area, like that's what he's going to take. I don't think he's in a position where he's trying to force things, which is really fun. Right now, he's 8th in success rate against zone coverage. So again, he's winning in all of these different ways, which is very hard for a defense to prepare against, especially when he's been going against these defenses that are not very good to begin with.
Dan, I'll give you some time to reconsider, because if you want to say that Drake Maye is Patrick Mahomes, you will have 10% of this listenership that will be reasonably like, oh, come on now, it's too soon. That's not right. 80% will go, yes, he said it. He's the brave one. This is my favorite guest who's ever been on the show. And then you'll have the 10% that go, no, he's better than Patrick Mahomes. What the hell are you talking about? So just, end of the show. If you change your mind, let us know.
All right.
The last thought I had about this is this. There have been a lot of questions this week to the point I made in the one you did, where he's not forcing things necessarily and they're scrambling. And he's admitted that like giving up on plays is kind of against his nature. But then you get hit and you're reminded, oh yeah, this sucks. I don't want to wake up feeling like this on Monday mornings. This is really important in this game, not because Myles Garrett is a terror. And yes, he is, Mom and Dad. It's just to say that the holistic nature, when you zoom all the way out and you include the Browns offense and Patriots defense, which we're about to get to, there's no way beyond just like lightning bolts hit 3 defenders and Dylan Gabriel throws deep on that same play and gets a completion, that Cleveland scoring 20 or more. Like I would be floored. So if you're Drake Maye, you're going, if I can get to 20 just within 60 minutes, we're good. And it's not about preserving me. It's not about being a coward. It's not about trying to avoid the big play. It's just to say that in this game, the way I have to win, the game I need to play is different than when we played the Bills. And we got to take those shots and we got to extend the play. And it's the last drive. And Daquan Jones has me by the collar and I'm falling, but I'm still going to throw it because what the hell, it's Sunday night. I need to beat Josh Allen. And it works. You don't have to do that now. Dylan Gabriel's not Josh Allen. And that is part of the discipline and the understanding of how Mike Vrabel looks at this and everyone else, is that holistic view, the complementary football. What do we need to do to beat the Browns this Sunday? It's going to be different than next week. It's going to be different from last week. But to me, this is the discipline, because of the pass rush and how the Browns are built, that's needed more than ever. And I'm curious to see if he's up for it, because I get it when he's when he doesn't want to give up. I understand why, and he's mostly done it, but the margin for error here is thinner against this pass rush.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's probably one of those things where the ADOT probably is not going to be as high as it usually is. Sometimes if you are going to be able to hold up in protection and you are able to hit some of those deep shots, he will. But I think the flats and the checkdowns, I think, are probably going to be your best friend against this defense.
Yeah. Okay. Don't give me a win-loss who wins the game, a game pick, but give me, how do you think this plays out? All of this included.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of plays out as we said, where I think New England just kind of has a lot of answers for whatever the Browns are going to throw at them. And the Browns are very much still this is what we do it well type of defense. And I think New England just has, between the pass catchers against the secondary, that's been very up and down so far this year. I just think they have enough to get through whatever, the defensive line is going to be able to get through. So I do think that this is going to be just an offense that doesn't really have a lot of trouble scoring, even if there are some of those couple negative plays and more negative plays than we've kind of seen from the Patriots over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I think they will stick with what worked last week because I think there are elements that will carry over, and that's playing a lot more 11 personnel. You mentioned 12, and I think it will help with the chipping, but they were so good with Matt Collins as that de facto tight end, and they're averaging 6.5 yards per carry, which again, not going to happen against Cleveland on the ground. But you can use certain crack blocks, you can use certain fakes and bootlegs, and again, draws and screens and all the things we talked about. But when you have three receivers in that field spread, and they'll go empty sometimes because Drake Maye was in empty more last week than we've ever seen. Like that gives you more of the quick available, hitters, and that's the best rushing group that you have. So I don't see why you would bulk up because it also invites a really fast, good linebacking core for Cleveland. I'd rather pick on Tyson Campbell if I'm Josh McDaniels. I'd rather pick on their nickels, and I would rather go after Ronnie Hickman in coverage when they are in man, depending on who's spinning up top if they're in cover one. But the point is, I think that gives you more options if you're Drake Maye with the field spread than it would if you kind of condense and hope that we can kind of play two back and barrel away forward, because it just hasn't worked. And I don't think this is the defense that would work. I think they get to 20 in that neighborhood, and it won't be more than 5 points either way. I could be wrong, but there's just something about like they're due for a little bit of a clunker offensively. And again, Myles Garrett and Malik Collins alone are just scare me. All right. Browns offense versus Patriots defense. Again, second worst offense in the league. The only offense that's worse is the one the Patriots just saw in Tennessee. And it's not imbalanced, like you mentioned. Oh, they got a great run defense, but their pass defense, there are spots to pick at. 31st in passing for the Browns, 30th in rushing. And Quinshon Judkins was not, as big a part of the formula at the early part of the season as he is now. So look, this should be a game that the Patriots defense controls. But we know, watching them, that the first three drives are like them just going, yeah, well, we'll get to it. Like you're late to class is how this goes. And you're docked points already. Do you make anything of that? Because it's been the most consistent thing about this defense all year is that just they're getting beat by scripts almost every single week.
Yeah, it was interesting. And I've looked into it, and there's not a ton. One of the things is like they just get run on a little more often on those early drives. And I think it's maybe just like a feeling out process of what the opposing team is trying to do, because they're not giving up many explosives on the ground in that area, but they're giving up a very high success rate. So when you kind of look at what they're doing, they're like in the 20s in DVOA against the run in the first quarter, and then they turn into one of the best run defenses in the league from quarters 2 to 4. So it's giving up a few more yards before contact per rush in the first quarter, a higher success rate. And then I think they kind of, settle down once they know kind of what gaps they need to be in. They're hitting it and they kind of settle down for the rest of the game. And then, I mean, the pass defense was just kind of bad overall. So wasn't really much difference between those two of what they were doing, early in the game or later. But it's just kind of getting some of those runs early in the game, which I think is going to be a key here, because that's really the only thing the Browns can do right now that Judkins is back there, because that really has changed their run game.
Yeah, barring a Drake Maye strip sack in the third quarter and the Browns are still within 10, like they have to win the first quarter. So it's very interesting that if you're the Patriots defense and you're going, what are our keys to this? Well, win early. dictate terms, set the terms of engagement of like, you're not going to be able to run the ball and play in whatever personnel groupings you are and have Dylan Gabriel pew 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 his way downfield. It's just not going to happen. You have to do something you're comfortable doing, which is have him throw downfield, because these are just some of the most hilarious stats that I've come across the entire year. This is all courtesy of Next Gen Stats on Dylan Gabriel, who we all understand, is a rookie mid-round pick and not the best quarterback in the world. Let's be kind. He has the lowest intended air yards, okay, on throws, where his basically average depth of target (ADOT) of the entire league, 5.5 yards downfield. When those passes are completed, his completed air yards, how far away are these receivers from the line of scrimmage? 3.3 yards per completion, meaning if those receivers just stood still and just fell over sideways, and he had 3 completions in a row, you still don't have a first down if you're the Browns. That's how short this is for him. Now, granted, it's partly because they get the ball out of his hands very quickly. He's got the second fastest snap to throw time in the NFL, 2.6 seconds. And there's a version, though, as much as I believe in the Patriots' run defense, aside from the first quarter, that they might go, all right, they're expecting us to run, but you got the third worst short pass defense by DVOA. We'll clog you up over the middle of the field and have all these quick hitters, and they might get somewhere. So, like, it's not something that over time I expect the Patriots to lose out on just based on the talent discrepancy here. But the fact that Dylan Gabriel is throwing so shorter than anyone, and the Patriots are bad in the short middle, it shouldn't be that much of an opening for Cleveland, but there's something there.
Yeah, I think if there's a way that they are able to keep the ball and just kind of play ball control, like that's the way they do it, where you have some successful runs and Junkins is breaking some tackles in the ground game, which the Patriots, at least on the ground, have not been allowing too much. In the pass game, in space, it's a little different story. So like that's where they can get it. If you're just kind of dinking and dunking your way, it's like if the peak Miami offense like didn't have speed, like that's kind of what they're
this is great.
They're doing right now is just like it's impossible to pressure him because he's getting the ball out so quickly on most snaps. But they're just not throwing downfield. But you have guys like a Harold Fannin who's a lot of fun and is able to be a little shifty in the middle of the field. So it's kind of like those things. Not much really scares you in a sense where you feel like those guys are going to break open something down the field. So it is going to be just highly methodical if it happens. But I think kind of the way we said the margin for error for the Patriots is kind of big because there's just so many areas you can take advantage of. I think the margin for error for Cleveland is just so small because I just don't think those plays have a very high percentage of breaking off and really making something happen. So it's something where as long as the Patriots aren't beating themselves by missing tackles, both through the air and on the ground, I think this is something where the Cleveland's just not going to be able to move the ball a lot.
Yeah, and I mentioned, a smaller margin for error for Maye. That's more like in the pocket when you go from 2.4 seconds to 2.7. Danger lurks much faster against that pass rush. It's not like the big part of the game. It's not the whole offense. It's just like Myles Garrett's really good at strip sacking, which is why I started with 2 hands on the ball. You mentioned Harold Fannin, who was an awesome watch during the draft. He's a rookie tight end. He runs weird, small school guy. He's the leading receiver. David Njoku, if he's back, is their second leading receiver. Jerry Jeudy's still in there. But this is the middle of the field kind of offense. And like you're saying, it's very quick passing and timing and all those different things. It's interesting, though, to me for a, Shanahan adjacent offense that they're not majoring in a lot of play action. And I know part of this is a function of game script where they're just behind. And why are we going to fake the run when we're not actually going to run the ball? Which, again, it doesn't play a ton into it because the Patriots play action numbers are like okay defensively. But it's just something to go, they're comfortable straight drop back, or not comfortable, but they feel that they can at least throw short often enough where they're doing it more than most teams in the league. So it's interesting. Beyond that, you mentioned Judkins, and this is a big tell, right? Because the Patriots have been much better tackling the last 2 weeks. And Dylan Gabriel, okay, he's going to try to throw short, and we'll see if he can sustain drives. Judkins is their best bet. He's averaging 3.5 broken tackles per game. He's also had nearly 2 runs per game of 10 yards or longer. So those are their explosives. Patriots have only had 5 missed tackles the last 2 weeks, which is wild for a team that missed more than 5 every single game, weeks 1 through 5. And then the last 2 just said, we should probably wrap up. It'll be harder with Judkins. But to your point, if the Patriots don't beat themselves and upon first contact, he goes down, and so does Fannin, and so does Njoku, who, again, their leading receivers have barely over 20 catches in 6-7 games. That's how they win. Just straight up sound, simple football.
Yeah, and it sounds really simple, but that I think just kind of is it, just based on how Cleveland is going to play, because they're just not going to beat you in other ways. I just don't think they have it in their arsenal. It's just kind of going to have to be if, there's but I mean, I kind of brought it up earlier where you do have 2 of the worst coverage linebackers in the league this year are playing against potentially 2 tight ends who can kind of work over the middle. That could potentially be something, but yeah, there are not many avenues for this Browns offense to win other than just kind of breaking tackles and breaking off some of those big plays as a result.
Yeah, and they might have some trick plays, because you understand what you're going into, and not because of the defense, but just on the road and how different it is for your rookie quarterback. And you're like, yeah, F it, we should do this. It is interesting, though, that, despite those numbers that the linebackers, like the only area in pass defense by DVOA that they're actually been okay is against tight ends. They're bottom 10 against every number 1 receiver, number 2 receiver, number 3 receiver. That'll turn around eventually. It just feels like the Titanic doing a U-turn or some cruise ship, because Christian Gonzalez only has 1 pass breakup since he came back. And it was a big one. It was an important one. End of the Bills game. Okay, forced him to kick a field goal, and then Drake Maye goes and wins the game. But I'd like to see more from him. And I don't think this is a shadow Jerry Jeudy game. You don't need to go to that extent. But maybe Njoku on third down. And that, to me, is something I'm keeping my eye on. Not because it's essential to winning this game. I want to see Christian Gonzalez be Christian Gonzalez. I don't think that's too much to ask, and we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and I think that's when you kind of are looking at the efficiency of the New England defense and kind of struggling in pass defense. You really just haven't seen him be that. And I think if you do have hope that he's going to be the type of player that we know he can be in coverage, that does give you some hope going forward. But like you said, this isn't really the game where that's needed to happen. So it probably is like a nice little, we can get him out there against Jerry Jeudy, who can sometimes bring. I've never been a really big Jerry Jeudy fan in the way he like kind of doesn't really run routes, just kind of like moves. And so I think like that is something where you can kind of get him adjusted a little bit into, playing into game shape a little bit. And I think you kind of probably saw that the last week too against, Tennessee just doesn't have receivers either. So eventually we will get there. I do think there is more coverage that New England's going to be able to play as we get later into the season. And if this is going to be a team that like really means something, you're probably going to have to do that. So it's games like this where you should hopefully be shutting down a pass defense that can probably set that up later in the season.
Yeah, I'm with you. And for what it's worth, his position coach, who, we talk to them every other week. 1 week it's offensive coaches, the next week it's defensive coaches. They're never going to say bad things about their players. I wouldn't if I were in their shoes. But he said, I think Gonzalez is getting his game legs back, because Christian told him after he came back in the first game against Carolina, where they, by the way, didn't have him on the pitch count. It was like, okay, you've been waiting long enough. You've been rehabbing long enough. We're gonna have you play football now. He said, like, man, I got to get my game legs back. So maybe that shows up. Maybe he does something. I think this is a game, though, again, simple sound football. You play zone, and you have your front 4 just kind of go nuts. Because Mike Vrabel, in last year in Cleveland, come full circle here before we make our game picks, worked with this offensive line. And when their defensive coaches, who, again, we talked to today, Mike Smith says, oh, this is absolutely helpful. And that's not a dude who would, say anything otherwise. But I think in this instance is probably true. Yeah, Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, here's your tip sheet. And this is what, all these guys like and don't like, and here are their techniques. Because I was in that room. Like that stuff, that granular knowledge is so valuable. And I think that's a reason where you don't have to blitz. You don't have to do anything. You just wait for them to kind of implode, like they did with Cam Ward last week. Their blitz rate was barely over 10%.
Yeah, it's just you can trust the coverage, right? Again, it's kind of like it's the inverse of what I was saying about Cleveland, where they trust the pass rush, so they're just going to drop everybody into coverage. When you can trust the coverage, like I think New England has, previously, you can kind of allow the fronts to do some other things. And just kind of going into it, Gonzalez is 36th among cornerbacks in adjusted yards allowed per coverage snap, which is still pretty good for saying he's not where he is yet. Is good, and 25th in cover in targets allowed per coverage snap, and that's good too. So teams are not just throwing at him while he's still getting his legs back. So I think those are positive indicators where if this is the version of Christian Gonzalez that we're getting, and he's still that good in some of those metrics, and that's among like 90 guys who have played, at least 100 coverage snaps. If that's the version of Christian Gonzalez we're getting, he doesn't feel like he's playing to his fullest ability. I think that's still a very positive sign.
I like those stats because the raw coverage stats, and I brought this up before about PFF. This isn't even about PFF. Like Pro Football Reference is doing advanced defense now, and sometimes really valuable. Chris Gonzalez, I'm looking at his numbers today, had him down for 16 catches allowed. I'm like, I'm sorry. Where was I during these games? Because I've watched them, and I've rewatched them, and I've charted every single snap. And again, I don't lean into the coverage data because I just don't think, aside from the man snaps, it's particularly valuable. I mean, sometimes you can tell in the all 22, but it's just not – the juice is not worth the squeeze there at that point for me in writing and doing the podcast. But it's not right. The ones you just cited, though, how many snaps are you playing? How many yards are you allowing? How many, targets are you seeing? Like that tells a little bit of a story. Anyway, all right, game picks. What do you got?
Patriots by a decent amount. I don't know if
give me a score. We got to have a score.
Yeah, all right. We have to have a score. I'm gonna go. It's like 28-13.
Okay, I like it. People will like it more than my pick. Dan, I don't know. It's a pit in my stomach. I don't know what it is. The Jared Wilson coming off of 2 sacks against Tennessee, neither of which was allowed to Jeffrey Simmons, by the way. I'm going to go 20-16, and it could be a backdoor field goal touchdown for the Browns. It would mean that they are covering, I believe, based on the spread. There's just something about it, and I could look like a complete fool. And then the Patriots might win 40-10. I don't know, but that big game is coming, and it could be this week. We'll see. I want to pivot quickly though to not Patriots, not Browns. Give us something around the league, like something you're hot on. You're diving into everyone like you just did with the Patriots. Like what's super interesting that people don't know about the league right now?
Oh man, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, there's.
Go, man.
One of the things I'm like been super interested in is, it's a lot of the stuff that I've really been interested in, like all the good teams are on bye this week. And I like really wanted to just dive into more of what some of these teams are doing. But I think looking at like what some of the best wide receivers in the league have been doing lately, and the way that teams like the Seahawks and the Lions have moved like JSN and Amon-Ra St. Brown like around a one in motion. Like these were 2 primarily slot players in previous years. They're playing more to the outside. The way that Detroit right now is kind of motioning St. Brown out to like stacks with Jamison Williams, and that's just throwing defenses into a tizzy and getting a guy who has been incredible at getting open throughout his career, even more open just because of the spacing they're using with some of the pre-snap alignment. And it's a very similar thing with JSN. It's like, I think we're starting to, that's the next evolution of offense, I think, is in a way that we're just manipulating some of these guys who have been so good on their own at getting open into ways where it's kind of virtually impossible for defenses to be covering them. And I think kind of that's what we've seen from some of these, we've seen it from Puka too, over his entire career, where he's just in motion he runs like 9 miles a game just because of how much motion he's using. I think we're starting to see a lot of that come from some of these receivers, and it's been a lot of fun to watch.
I like that. Yeah, especially the 2 guys you mentioned. And as soon as you said their names, like, okay, these are primarily slot guys. But look, if you're good enough in the slot, you can play anywhere. And I think understanding that there are a lot of coordinators that are starting to unpackage the traditional boxes that you would put these players in and be like, well, used to just have tight ends who were in line, and then they were moved tight ends, and maybe we put them in the backfield, or you have these receivers, or running backs who are out wide. Like, there's always been some interchangeable parts, but it's your willingness to commit to it, which is the difference than the dabbling. And so in this instance, like, look, moving from the slot to further outside the numbers is not like some big leap. But with the combination of the motion and the stacks that you mentioned, ultimately what that does is not only just force the defense to have to process and go through their rules and adjust in a split second, it leverages the gravity of those receivers. Like I talk about all the time with the three-point shooter, the way that you would want to in a basketball court, but on the football field, all that space. Because, by the way, Jamison Williams can fly right by you. And we saw this in a very small example of the Patriots, when the Patriots played the Titans last weekend. And if you were paying attention, Stephon Diggs came in motion right to left. Or Austin Hooper makes this great catch in the back corner of the end zone, underthrown ball. It looked like the Titans were in banjo coverage. So it's just, you got the first left route, and I got the first going to the right or in-breaker, outbreaker. And they both went vertical. But they both went vertical after both defenders are staring at Diggs going, he's going into that stack, like you had just mentioned. But in front of him goes Austin Hooper. And so it's just the player in addition to the scheme, which again is broadly put. But I think what you're getting at is just maximizing that talent and ability beyond what they can do on their own. It's what they can do within the whole machine, even if you have to kind of move the machine around a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of the way offenses are starting to fight back more against some of the coverages that defenses have been starting to put out over the past couple years, where there was so much more match coverage. And when you are looking at a lot of these motions, it's late motion, and it's things that are going to right the second before the snap. It's something that is going to instantly change the responsibilities of the defense, and you're going to really force them to make sure their coverages are one sound, their communication sound, and they're able to adjust kind of within half a second right before the snap. So it's some of the stuff that some of the best offenses in the league are doing, and it's just super fun.
Yeah, cheat, burst, yeah, because then number one becomes number two, or three goes all the way to one, and then you're like, okay, who do I have? And it's cool, man. Something I'm looking for now for the next few weeks. What should we look for from you? You got a newsletter. You're on Blue Sky. You're going to be on Mina's pod, I'm sure, soon enough again. Like, what else is coming down the pipe?
Yeah, that pretty much, I think, sums it up. I'll be
Sorry.
No, it's fine. That was great. Yeah, I'm just going to be posting just kind of all different stuff all the time. So if you're following on socials, you'll find everything I'm doing, because I am way too online. Like I think most football writers are around this time, where it feels like every second where I'm not online thinking about football is kind of a waste, because that's what I'm like need to be doing, which probably is not very healthy, but it's what we do.
It is what we do. I am smarter about football because I follow Dan, because I read Dan, because I have him on my podcast. Even if you don't have a podcast, read him, follow him, subscribe to the newsletter. That's Dan, Pizzuta, for the folks who are only on audio, or you can just look in the description of this episode and find him there. I'll be calling you again. Hopefully we will talk about a little bit more balanced game. There are not commercials that we're like crossing our fingers for with Dylan Gabriel's on the field, but maybe they surprised. Again, I think this could be a closer game than people expect, but who knows? But as always, thank you for your time, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure to be here.
All right, coming off the best 4-minute drill we've ever done on the Pats Interference podcast, you're basically Cam Newton coming in to follow Tom Brady, because Pop Douglas blew all of our eyebrows off. I have no hair left because of how good his answers were. The man gave up his alias when he was in an Uber, which is going to be your first question. Yeah. But it's good to have the AFC Defensive Player of the Week here hanging out with us after 2 seconds in Tennessee. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Starting the clock right now. Okay, so you're in an Uber. Do you have a fake name?
I go by Swiper.
Swiper. Wow. Yeah. Why Swiper?
Obviously, you move I use a lot when I'm pass rushing, so I call it Swiper the Fox. Let's do it.
So people have to ask you about that, right? I've never heard Swiper as a name before in my life.
No, it's a part of all my social media handles, but I don't really do it too much in person, though.
Okay. Next question. What's the worst pronunciation of your name that you've ever heard?
Oh, man. What you want? K'Lavon? You take it whichever way you want to take it.
I like it. K'Lavon. Yeah, it's not too good. What shows are you watching right now?
Right now, it's either Thursday Night Football, Monday Night Football, or Sunday Night Football. So it's either those.
All right, guy's a baller. Tell me about the hardest hit you've ever delivered in a game.
Maybe my junior year at LSU, we played Georgia Southern. Ended up getting the ball off the guy. He was down on the ground for a couple seconds, so I'll take pride in that one.
Do you feel bad at all?
No, that's not my job.
I mean, guy goes to Georgia Southern. You're at LSU, nothing?
No, it's not my job. No,
okay.
No.
Cage match. You go in one side, Coach Vrabel goes in the other. Who's coming out?
I'm tearing the frames off Braves. I can't. Oh, I got me any day. But Brave's cool, though. He'll warrior, but I got me, though.
Okay. All right. I feel like you struck a good balance. You don't want to piss off the boss, but you're being honest.
Yeah, no, I got me. I don't care about all that. I got me.
Do you have a Vrabel impression by chance?
Man, I don't have any impressions, though. But he is a character for sure, though. He got some unique ways, though.
Yeah. All right. How many me-looking dudes would it take to block you?
0.
0?
Yeah.
So you would just get blocked if I didn't exist?
No.
How many clones would you need for me to stop you from getting to the quarterback?
No, it wouldn't matter how many, though.
Okay. How about 1?
Oh, man. See? Too quick.
Oh, well, you're still there, so I don't know. I think I won. What's something fans and media don't know about football that you really wish you could tell us and we got this straight?
That's a good question. It's my favorite sport. Boom.
That's your favorite? No, just like technically. You know, I talk about the game for a living. Like, I wish people stopped saying this or you knew this about pass rushing.
I really don't have too much, man. I don't get caught in everybody else's stuff, man. I kind of only get caught in my one way. Boom. Patriot way. That's it.
Okay. I have heard, though, per sources in your locker room, that you do get cut up trash talking a little bit. Can we get a little taste here for the fans?
Hey, Mac! Hey, Mac! Are you going to practice today? There we go, Mac. Nice to see you, brother. Mac run around with tassels on him, bro. I'd be like, bro, are we playing football or are you shredding everywhere? So that's my guy, though. That's my guy.
I didn't expect the impromptu. So Matt Collins is walking down the hallway that way to practice, and you were right on the money. Because I had some stuff teed up for you if you wanted to talk trash to me.
No. It's all natural, man. It's all natural.
Yeah, because some people say you picked 44 because that's the number of girls who said no to prom. So
man, bro. I love my wife, I love my girl, and I love my daughter. I don't know what he's talking about. Baby, it's been about you.
That's the best I got. You go by KC. You have any other nicknames?
Nope, Casey it is.
Okay. Fill in the blank. I am better at blank than all of my teammates.
I'm better at basketball. There you go.
All right, basketball. Drake might have something to say about this. This teammate FaceTimes you late at night. It's like 2:30, 2 in the morning. You are absolutely not picking up whatsoever.
Braden Swinston. I'm not answering his call. I already know it's foolishness.
Another LSU guy. That's tough. Pick a teammate you would honestly not mind dating your sister.
0. Nobody.
Come on, we got to have one good guy in that locker room.
Nobody. What you talking about, man? My sister's off limits.
Least favorite media question.
How do you pronounce your name?
We should know by now. It's our job. All right, last one. We always end on this. Who should I interview next in the same format and why?
Christian Barmore. You'll have a
We did Barmore. He told us, I asked him, if you're in the woods, how long would you survive on your own? He said, I would chase down dogs. There he is.
There you go. That's my guy.
That guy told us he would chase a duck and a deer and just catch them, and that's how he would hunt.
Bare hands, and that's how it goes. So that's who I got. I mean, if y'all did Be More, y'all need to do a sequel of Be More.
Sequel of Be More. Also the guy people say, hey, if shit's going down, you want him to have your back more than any other teammate.
You ever see me fight in the forest with a grizzly bear? Help the bear.
Thank you, K'Lavon.